Flicka by Mary O'Hara. Chapter 24. Ken wanted Gus to examine Flicka immediately, but nothing could deter the Swede from getting back to the bunkhouse and extricating himself from his city clothes without a moment's delay. As they walked up the road together, Ken told of his day, the terrible thing that had happened, Flicka down and hurt somehow, and Crosby's cow with her udder torn to pieces, and how he thought at first the wildcat had attacked her, and he talked and kept looking up at the face of the big foreman. Gus's pale blue eyes, with pupils as small as pinpoints, were always full of light, and when he smiled his lips went up at the corners like a child's. Nothing ever upset Gus or hurried him. The big, flashy sombrero looked funny on his grey curls. While Gus changed into blue jeans and elastic-sided boots, Ken put the cows into their stanchions. Even when the milking was finished and the cows driven out into the pasture, Gus would not go down to see Flicka or eat supper until he had saddled Shorty and ridden over to Crosby's ranch to see about the cow. Ken got supper in the bunkhouse, and when Gus returned they ate it together there. Cold beefsteak, boiled potatoes, apple sauce with thick yellow cream. The cow had gone home. When Gus got there, Crosby's was bandaging her udder. Gus helped him and told him how Ken had found her and cut her loose from the fence. They used adhesive tape and bandages. "Why didn't you sew her up?" asked Ken. The Swede shook his head. "She's true. Dot cow no good for calving nor milking. Crosby going to take her to the butcher." Gus washed the dishes, and Ken wiped them and put them away. Then Gus took out his pipe and lit it, put his old torn felt hat on his head, and they walked down through the pasture to see Flicka. Ken carried a can of oats with him, and halfway down the path began to call the filly's name and to whistle to her. Suddenly he clutched Gus's arm and stopped walking. He called again. There was an answering nicker. "Oh, Gus, she's calling to me." "Yee whiz," said the Swede, his lips turning up in a smile. "She sure is, Kenny." Ken ran ahead, loping down the path and calling, "Flicka, Flicka, Flicka." And an eager whinny came again from the little mare. When Gus reached the nursery, the filly was sitting up, eating the oats which Ken had poured into her feed box. "Dot funny ting," said the man slowly, standing over her. "She's got good appetite. Don't seem sick or hurt." He sat down on the bank, comfortable again and glad to be home, and drew peace into his soul with long, quiet puffs of his pipe. "What do you think it is, Gus?" asked Ken anxiously. "Should we try to make her stand up?" Gus shook his head. "Better wait till your father come home. It might be her back, but sitting up like dot, eating her oats, I don't know." Ken brought a bucket of water and Flicka put her nose in and drank. "I think dot smart little filly," said the Swede. "You don't think she's loco, Gus?" Ken rolled away the bucket and sat down on the grass beside Flicka with his arm around her neck. "No. Luck at dot face, dot eye. Not white ring around like rockets. But, Gus, she did try to jump that fence. Dot's bad mudder, bad habits. Wid rocket, she always go through fences. Yes, Dad said she was always tearing through fences after that big mother of hers. But Ken, rocket break 'em, and the filly go after. Dot's right. Little fillies must go after their mothers. Now this time is different. Flicka try breaking 'em once herself, and she get bad fall. Bad minutes lying on the ground with the wire cutting in lack fire. Maybe she smart enough to learn lesson. Maybe she never bucked the wire again. I was on Shorty once, and we stepped over a little piece of loose wire lying on the ground. Just an old rusty piece, not more than 10 feet long, and when Shorty's feet touched it, he shook all over. Shorty's smart horse. The family did not get home until after 10. Gus had gone to bed long since. But Ken was waiting for the car on the hill behind the house, he and the 2 dogs watching the empty road. The sky was crowded with stars, and the Milky Way so brilliant that it shed a soft light over woods and fields and stream. When Ken saw the headlights of the car, a happy glow went through him. Chaps began to bark, and both dogs got up and moved around restlessly, wagging their tails and nipping at each other. The car roared up the hill, circled around, came to a stop, and Ken jumped on the running board and stuck his head in the front window. His mother's face was right there, smiling at him from under her green turban, and everyone spoke at once. She said, "Hello, darling. Here we are. Were you lonesome?" While Howard yelled from the back seat, "Gee, you missed it. You ought to seen the wild horse race. 3 Indians fell off." And his father was looking over the seat, handing Tim the keys of the car and telling him to open up the back and unload the sacks of potatoes and onions. "Howard, you help Tim unload and put away the provisions," he added, then turned to Ken. "Ken, I want to see you." "Dad, Flicka." It was the 3rd time Ken had said it. "Come on." His father's hand fell on his shoulder and pushed him down around the end of the house. "Dad, Flicka." "Ken, I'm proud of you." They were standing on the terrace, and Ken, looking up with his mouth open in surprise, saw his father's face, tired, but showing his big white teeth in a smile of pride. Ken stared. "Crosby's cow," said McLaughlin. "We stopped at Tie Siding on the way home for the mail. Crosby was there getting his mail. He told me how you had cut his cow loose from the wire when her udder was caught, and that Gus rode over and told him." Ken was getting ready to say, "Flicka," again, when his father lifted one of the boy's hands and held the small, helpless softness in his hard fist. "I used to think that these hands of yours would never be good for anything. They had as much strength to them as wet spaghetti. But today they manipulated a pair of wire cutters on a cow that was crazy with pain. You never did anything like that before in your life. What made you do it?" Ken, wondering himself, said, "Well, she bellowed so. You could hear something was the matter. I thought it might be the wildcat after her, and I remembered you said it was all mine, and I thought, if it had been Flicka, hey?" McLaughlin turned away and walked towards the door, still holding Ken's hand in his. "Well, now what was it you were going to tell me about Flicka?" Ken rapidly poured out the tale of Flicka's injury and helplessness, and McLaughlin listened gravely. "How do you know she can't get up?" he asked. "Because she tries. She gets her head up and makes a sort of scramble and then falls back again. She acts like she'd hurt her back," he added, his eyes devouring his father's face. "How's she lying?" asked McLaughlin. "Right on her side, in her place down there," said Ken, and added, "Gus and I didn't try to move her or get her up. We thought you'd know how to do it." "And I suppose she can't eat?" said McLaughlin wearily. "Oh, yes, she ate her oats." "How?" "I put the box right by her nose, and she lifted her head up and ate them." "All of them?" "Yes, cleaned them all up, and then I gave her a bucket of water and she drank some." "Can't be very sick then. I'll wait till morning, Ken." "Oh, Dad, please." "Shut up!" roared McLaughlin, going towards the door. "Can't a man ever have any peace? Time you were in bed too. Come on." After breakfast next morning, Rob went down to the nursery to see Flicka. Nell left her dishes and went too, with the cat on her shoulder. Howard and Ken were already there. Flicka had eaten her breakfast oats and licked the box clean. She lifted her head with ease. She whinnied now and then, but she would not get up. Rob's observations were always made rapidly. He said, "Stand back, all of you. I'm going to roll her over to the other side." Flicka was lying on her left side. He went behind her, leaned over, got hold of her left legs, one in his left hand, one in his right, then, backing off, he gently hauled her over until she was lying on her right side. The filly immediately made a scramble, using her two forelegs and the left hind leg to push with, and got up. Everyone laughed. Flicka stood calmly in the center of the group, and when Ken went to her head and put his hands on either side of her face, she remained quiet. "Nothing wrong with her back," said McLaughlin. "It's her leg. That right hind leg. She couldn't use it to push with, and, lying on the left side, she couldn't get up without it." "But she's been using it, Dad," said Ken anxiously. "Yes, it was all healed up, but look at it now. It's swollen. That means infection, and it hurts her worse than it did at first. Look, she's not bearing any weight on it." Ken's face was distraught when he noticed the swelling above the joint. Everyone knew that the worst danger of wire cuts was the infection that so often followed. "What do you do for an infection when it's a horse?" he faltered. Nell answered cheerfully, "Just what you'd do if it was a person. Wet dressing, poultices, and so that it will open and drain." Flicka showed no sign of fear or nervousness. When Ken petted her and smoothed her neck, she looked at him with trust and gratitude. "Now that she'll let us get close to her," continued Nell, automatically stroking her cat, "there won't be any trouble about it." "Why does she let us, Dad?" asked Ken. "Well," said McLaughlin grimly, "she's only got 3 legs. She can't run away, can she?" He walked off, Howard after him. Ken knew that his father couldn't bear to look at a sick animal, but his mother said, "We'll get that cleared up in no time, Kenny. I'll help you." A load fell from Kenny's shoulders. At least Flicka wasn't going to die. At least her back was not broken. He went back to the house with his mother, and she boiled some meal and put it in a linen bag, and mixed a disinfectant wash and put it in a bucket for Ken to carry down. When Flicka saw them coming, though Ken carried a bucket and Nell a basin with the poultices and bandages, enough to frighten even a well-broken horse, she showed no fear. "She has got sense, hasn't she, Mother?" muttered Ken, as they prepared the poultice. "She knows we're helping her, doesn't she?" "Looks like it," said Nell, preoccupied with the bandages. "Now you stand at her head, Ken. She's more used to you, while I do this." Flicka raised her leg off the ground while Nell bathed it and bandaged on the poultice. It made a comical-looking white knob above the hock. That's the end of chapter 24. Good night.